4,460. Sorry, I have to see it in my brain because my eyes fail me. For the packaging. F. He's not part of the drug mafia or involved in arms trafficking or that kind of thing. If he was, Europol would be on him. Contrary to what most such criminals believe, the only reason they haven't been caught is because it isn't yet the right time for them to be put behind bars. Their groups are regularly infiltrated by agents who are paid a fortune for their work. G. He doesn't want to be caught, and so he's very careful. On the other hand, he can't control his unconscious mind and is unwittingly following a set pattern. H. He appears to be completely normal and unlikely to arouse suspicion. He may even be kind and friendly, capable of gaining the confidence of the people he lures to their death. He spends some time with his victims, two of whom are women, who tend to be more trusting than men. I. He doesn't choose his victims. They could be men or women, of any age or social class. Morris pauses for a moment. There's something that doesn't fit with the rest. He rereads the list 2 or 3 times. On the 4th reading, he spots a flaw. C. He doesn't leave a clear signature, so he obviously has no desire to be identified. This murderer isn't trying to cleanse the world as Manson was, or like Ridgway, to purify his hometown. He's not trying, like Dahmer, to satisfy the appetite of the gods. Most criminals don't want to be caught, but they do want to be identified, and some in order to hit the headlines and gain fame and glory, like Zodiac or Jack the Ripper. Others perhaps think that their grandchildren will be proud of what they did when years later they discover a dusty diary in the attic. Others have a mission to fulfill, for example, driving away prostitutes by making them too afraid to walk the streets. Psychoanalysts have concluded that when serial killers suddenly stop murdering from one moment to the next, it's because they feel that the message they've been trying to send has finally been received. Of course, that's it. Why hadn't he thought of it before? For one simple reason, because it would have sent the police hunt off in 2 different directions, in search of the murderer and the person to whom he was sending the messages. And this, Kahn's murderer, is killing people very fast. Morris is almost sure that he will stop soon once the message has been received, in 2 or 3 days at most. And as with other serial killers whose victims appear to have nothing in common, this message must be intended for one person, just one. He goes back to the computer, turns it on, and sends a reassuring email to the commissioner. Don't worry, the murders will stop soon, before the festival is over. And just for the hell of it, he copies the email to a friend in Scotland Yard, as a way of letting him know that the French authorities respect him as a professional, have asked for his help and received it, that he is still capable of reaching conclusions which will later on prove correct, that he is not as old as they would like to think, his reputation is at stake, but he's sure his conclusion is the right one. 10:19 p.m. Hamid turns off his mobile phone. He isn't the slightest bit interested in what's going on in the rest of the world, and in the last half hour his phone has been inundated with grim messages. It's a sign that he should ditch the whole absurd idea of producing a film. He had clearly allowed himself to be carried away by vanity instead of listening to the advice of the sheik and of his own wife. He is starting to lose touch with himself. The world of luxury and glamour is beginning to poison him. Something he had always believed would never happen. Tomorrow, when things have calmed down, he'll call a press conference for the world media present in Cannes, and tell them that despite having already invested a large amount of money in the project, he's decided to pull out because it was a dream shared by all those involved, one of whom is no longer with us. A journalist is bound to ask if he has other projects in mind, and he'll reply that it's still too early to discuss such things, and that we need to respect the memory of the departed. Like anyone, even a minimum of decency, he deeply regrets the fact that the actor who is going to appear in his first film should have died of poisoning, and that his chosen director is still in the hospital. Although not now in danger of losing his life, but both these events carry a clear message: keep away from cinema. It isn't his world, and he is bound to lose money and gain nothing in return. Leave cinema to the filmmakers, music to the musicians, and literature to the writers. Ever since he first embarked on this adventure 2 months before, he has met with nothing but problems, wrestling with gigantic egos, rejecting outlandish budgets, editing a script that seemed to get worse with every new version, and putting up with condescending producers who treat him as if he knew absolutely nothing about films. His intentions had been impeccable: to make a film about the culture of his home country, about the beauty of the desert and the Bedouins' ancient wisdom and code of honor. He felt he owed this to his tribe, although the sheik had warned him not to stray from his original path. People get lost in the desert because they're taken in by mirages. You're doing an excellent job as a couturier. Focus all your energies on that. Hamid, however, wanted to go further, to show that he could surprise people, go higher, take risks. He had committed the sin of pride, but that wouldn't happen again. The journalists bombard him with questions. News, it seems, is traveling even faster than usual. He says he doesn't yet know any details, but that he'll make a full statement tomorrow. He repeats the same answer over and over, until one of his own security guards comes to his aid and asks the press to leave the couple alone. He summons an assistant and asks him to find Jasmine in the crowd of people in the garden. Bring her to him. They need to have a few photos taken together, a new press release confirming the deal, and a good PR person to keep the issue alive until October in the Fashion Week in Paris. Later on, he'll try to persuade the Belgian designer to join him. He genuinely liked her work, and is sure she would bring money and prestige to his group. However, he knows that at that moment, she'll be thinking that he was only trying to buy her because he wanted her principal model. Approaching her now would not only up the price, it would seem inelegant. To everything its proper time. It would be best to wait for the right moment. Iwa appears troubled by the journalist's questions. She says, I think we should leave. Absolutely not. I am not hard-hearted, as you know, but I can't get upset over something that only confirms what you've always told me, that I shouldn't get involved in cinema. Now, though, we're at a party. We're going to stay here until the end. His voice sounds sterner than he intended, but Iwa doesn't appear to notice, as if she were indifferent to his love as indifferent to his love as to his hate. In a more equitable tone of voice, he adds, this party is just perfect, don't you think? Our host must be spending a fortune to be here in Cannes. What with the travel and accommodation expenses of the celebrities who've all been specially selected to be present at this lavish gala supper. But you can be sure that all the free publicity will send his profits soaring, full-page spreads in magazines and newspapers, TV airtime, and hours of coverage on the cable channels that have nothing else to show. Women will associate his jewels with glamour. Men will wear his watches as proof that they're powerful and wealthy. And the young people will flick through the fashion pages and think, one day I want to be there too, wearing exactly that. Please, let us leave now. I just have a really bad feeling about this party. This was the last straw. He's put up with his wife's bad mood all day without complaint. She keeps turning on her mobile phone to see if there's another text message, and now he's beginning to think there really is something strange going on. Another man, perhaps, her ex-husband, who he saw in the hotel bar and who is perhaps doing everything he can to arrange a meeting. If that's the case, though, why doesn't she just tell him what she's feeling instead of withdrawing into herself? Don't talk to me about bad feelings. I'm trying to explain to you why people put on parties like this. If you ever decide to go into fashion, as you always dreamt of doing, or of once again owning a shop selling haute couture clothes, you could learn something. By the way, when I told you that I'd seen your ex in the bar last night, you told me that was impossible. Is he the reason you keep checking your mobile phone? Why on earth would he be here, she says, when what she feels like saying is, I know who ruined your film project, and I know that he's capable of far worse. We're in danger here. Please, let's leave. You didn't answer my question. The answer is yes. That's why I keep checking my mobile phone, because I know him, and I know he's here somewhere, and I'm afraid. Hamid laughs. I'm here too. Eva picks up a glass of champagne and drinks it down in one. He says nothing, feeling like she's simply being provocative. He looks around him, trying to forget the recent news that flashed up on his phone, and still hoping for a chance to have a few photos taken with Jasmine before they're all called into the room where supper will be served. The death of the actor couldn't have come in a worse moment. Now no one is asking about the big contract he signed with the unknown model, and yet half an hour earlier it was all the press were interested in. Not anymore. That's what he cares about. Despite his many years of working in this glamorous world, he still has a lot to learn. The contract he signed has been quickly forgotten, but the host of his party has managed to keep the media interest alive. None of the photographers and journalists present has left the party to go to the police station or to the hospital to find out exactly what has happened. They are admittedly fashion journalists, but their editors wouldn't have dared order them to leave for the simple reason that murders don't appear on the same pages as social events. Makers of expensive jewelry don't get themselves mixed up in cinematographic adventures. Big promoters know that regardless of how much blood is being spilled in the world right now, people will always prefer photos depicting an ideal, inaccessible life of luxury. Murders can take place next door or out in the street, but parties like this only occur at the very top of society. What could be of more interest to mere mortals than this perfect party, which would have been advertised months before in press releases, confirming that the jeweler would be holding his usual event in Cannes, and that all the invitations had already gone out. Not quite true. At that time, half of the guests would have received a kind of memorandum politely asking them to keep the date free. They would, of course, respond at once and reserve the date and buy their plane tickets and book their hotel rooms for 12 days, even if they're only staying for 48 hours. They need to prove to everyone that they're still members of the superclass, membership of which is invaluable in making business deals, opening doors, and feeding egos. The lavish invitation card would arrive 2 months later. The woman would start worrying about which dress to wear for the occasion, and the men would contact a few acquaintances to ask if they could meet in a bar to discuss business before supper. This was the male way of saying, I've been invited to the party, have you? Even if the acquaintance claimed he was too busy and wasn't sure he'd be able to travel to Cannes on that date, the message had been sent loud and clear. That full diary was just an excuse for not having yet been invited. Minutes later, that very busy man would start mobilizing friends, advisors, and associates to wangle him an invitation. This meant that the host could then choose the second half of his guest list, basing himself on these three things: power, money, contacts, the perfect party. A professional team of caterers would be signed up on the day itself. The order would go out to serve as much alcohol as possible, preferably plenty of France's legendary and unbeatable champagne. Guests from other countries don't realize that they're being served a drink produced in the country itself, and which is therefore much cheaper than they might think. The women feel, as even does Iwa at that moment, that the golden liquid in the glass is the best possible complement to the dress, shoes, and bag. The men are all holding a glass as well, but they drink much less. They've come to make peace with a competitor, to cement relationships with a supplier, or to meet a potential distributor of their products. Hundreds of business cards are exchanged on such nights, most of them among professionals. A few, of course, are given to pretty women who know they're not worth the paper they're printed on. No one has come here hoping to find the love of their life, but to make deals, to shine, and possibly to enjoy themselves a little. Enjoying yourself is optional and not of great importance. The people here tonight come from 3 points of an imaginary triangle. At one point are those who have it all and spend their days playing golf or having lunch, hanging out at some exclusive club, and who, when they go into a shop, can buy anything they want without first asking the price. Having reached the top, they have realized something that had never even occurred to them before. They cannot bear to be alone. They can't stand the company of their husband or wife, and they need to be on the go all the time, in the belief that they can still make a difference to humanity. Although they've discovered since they retired that their day-to-day life is as dull as that of any other middle-class person. Eat breakfast, read the newspaper, eat lunch, take a nap, eat supper, watch TV. They accept most of the supper invitations they receive. They go to social and sporting events at the weekend. They spend their holidays in fashionable places, even though they no longer work. And they still believe in something called holidays. At the second point on the triangle are those who haven't yet achieved anything, and who are doing their best to row in very choppy waters, to break the resistance to break the resistance of the have-it-alls, to look happy even if one of their parents happens to be in the hospital, and they're having to sell off things that they don't even own. Finally, at the apex is the superclass. This is the ideal mixture for the party. Those who have reached the top and yet carry on life as normal may well have enough money stashed away for several generations, but their influence has waned, and they have realized too late that power is actually more important than wealth. Those who haven't yet reached the top put all their energy and enthusiasm, into making the party go with a swing, thinking that they're making a really good impression, only to discover in the weeks that follow that no one phones them, despite all the business cards they handed out. Finally, there are those who wobble about on the apex, knowing that it's very windy up there and that the slightest gust could blow them off into the abyss below. People keep coming over to talk to them, although no one mentions the murder, either because they don't know about it since they live in a world where such things don't happen, or out of politeness, which he very much doubts. He looks around him and sees the thing he hates most in the fashion world: middle-aged women who dress as if they were still 20. Haven't they noticed that it's time they changed their style? He speaks to one person, smiles at another, thanks someone else for a kind remark, introduces Iwa to the few who still don't know her. He has, however, only one thought in his mind: to find Jasmine within the next 5 minutes and pose for the photographers. An industrialist and his wife are telling him in detail about the last time they met, a meeting of which Hamid has no recollection, although he nods wisely. They talk about trips they've made, people they've met, and projects they're involved in. No one touches on genuinely interesting topics like, are you happy? Or, after all we've been through, what does victory actually feel like? They're part of the superclass and therefore obliged to behave as if they were contented and fulfilled, even if they're actually asking themselves, what shall I do with my future, now that I have everything I have ever dreamt of? A squalid creature in tight trousers and an Indian top approaches, looking like something out of a comic strip. Mr. Hussein, I'm terribly sorry. Who are you? I work for you, sir. How absurd. Look, I'm busy. Look, I'm busy right now, and I know everything I need to know about tonight's sad events, so there's no need for you to worry. The creature, however, stays where he is. Hamid begins to feel embarrassed by his presence. Mainly because friends nearby will have heard those dreadful words, I work for you, sir. Whatever will they think? Mr. Hussein, I'm just about to bring over the actress who's going to be appearing in your film. I had to leave her for a moment because I got a phone message, but later. At the moment, I'm waiting to meet Jasmine Tiger. This strange creature leaves. The actress who's going to be appearing in his film, poor girl, signed up and dismissed all in one day. Iwa is holding a champagne glass in one hand and her mobile phone and an extinguished cigarette in the other. The industrialist takes a gold lighter out of his pocket and offers to light her cigarettes. No, thank you. It's all right. I can do it myself, she says. I'm deliberately keeping both hands occupied in an attempt to smoke less. She would like to say, I'm holding my mobile phone so as to protect this idiot who refuses to believe me and who has never shown the slightest interest in my life or what I've been through. If I get another message, I'll make a scene and he'll be forced to leave and take me with him, whether he wants to or not, even if he tells me off afterward. At least I can console myself with the thought that I saved his life. I know who the killer is, and I can feel the presence of absolute evil very near. A receptionist starts asking the guests to go into the main dining area. Hamid Hussein is prepared to accept his fate without complaint. The photo can wait until tomorrow when he goes up the steps with her. Just then, one of the assistants appears. Jasmine Tiger isn't here. She must have left. Never mind. Perhaps they forgot to tell her that we were supposed to meet. He looks very calm, like someone accustomed to dealing with such situations. Inside, though, his blood is boiling. She left the party? Who does she think she is? It's so easy to die. The human body may well be one of the most efficient mechanisms in creation, but all it takes is a small metal projectile to enter and cut through it at a certain speed, and that's right. Death, according to the dictionary, is the end of a life, although life also needs to be properly defined. The permanent paralysis of the body's vital function, like brain activity, breathing, blood flow, and to and from the heart. Only two things resist this permanent paralysis: the hair and the nails, which continue to grow for a few days or weeks. The definition changes when it comes to religions. For some, death means moving to a higher state, while others believe that it is merely a temporary condition and that the soul inhabiting the body will return later on, either to pay for its sins or to enjoy in the next life the
Mom,
blessings.
what are you doing?
I'm reading. The blessings denied it during the previous incarnation. The young woman is standing very still by his side. Either the champagne has taken full effect or its effects have passed, and she now realizes that she knows no one, that this could be both her first and last invitation to such a party, and that dreams sometimes turn into nightmares. When he moved away for a moment, the other sadder girl, he noticed a few men approach the actress, but it seems she felt uncomfortable with all of them. When she saw him reappear, she asked him to stay with her for the rest of the party. She also asked if he had transport because she has no money, and it doesn't look as if her companion will be coming back. Yes, of course, I'll gladly take you home. This wasn't in his plans, but having spotted the policeman observing the guests, he knows it's best to look as if he's with someone, that he's just another of the important anonymous people there, proud to have a pretty much younger woman with him, one who so perfectly fits the norm of that particular place. Don't you think we should go in? Yes, but I know how these things work. It's best to wait until everyone else is seated. Several of the tables will have places reserved at them for certain people, and we don't want to find ourselves in the embarrassing position of sitting down where we shouldn't. He notices that for a moment the girl looks slightly disappointed that he doesn't have one of those reserved places. The waiters are collecting the empty, scattered glasses around the garden. The models have stepped down from their ridiculous pedestals where their gyrations have persuaded the male guests at the party that life can still be interesting, and reminded the female guests that they really must get some more liposuction, Botox, silicone, or plastic surgery. Please, let's go in. I need to eat. I'll get sick if I don't. She takes his arm, and they walk toward the room on the upper floor. It would seem that his last message to Iwa has been received and discarded. But then he knows now what to expect from a woman as corrupt as his ex-wife. The angel with the dark eyes continues by his side. She was the one who had made him turn around at the right moment and notice the plainclothes policeman, when, in theory, he should have been concentrating on the arrival of the famous courtier. All right, we'll go in. They walk up the steps and into the dining room. As they do, he asks her politely to let go of his arm in case any friends there should misinterpret the situation. Are you married then? No, divorced. Yes, Eva was thinking. She had been right. Her intuition was correct. The problems they have encountered so far this evening are nothing compared to what she has just seen. Since Igor can have no professional reason for being at a film festival, his presence there can only have one possible motive. Igor, Hamid says. The man, accompanied by a much younger woman, looks straight at him. Iwa's heart starts pounding. She says to Hamid, "What are you doing here?" Or, "What are you doing?" Hamid has already got up from the table. He has no idea what he's doing. He is walking toward absolute, limitless evil, capable of anything. Hamid assumes that Igor is just another adult, and that he can confront him with either physical force or logical argument. What he doesn't know is that absolute evil has the heart of a child and takes no responsibility for its actions, and is convinced that it's right. And when it doesn't get what it wants, it's not afraid to use all possible means to satisfy its desires. Now she understands how it was that the angel changed so quickly into a devil, because he has always nursed vengeance and rancor in his heart, even though he claimed to have grown up and overcome all his traumas, because he is unbeatable when it comes to succeeding in life, thus confirming his belief in his own omnipotence, because he doesn't know how to give up, having survived the worst possible torments through which he walked without so much as a backward glance, all the while repeating to himself, "One day I'll be back, and then you'll see what I'm capable of." Apparently, he's found someone more interesting to talk to than us, says a former Miss Europe, who is also sitting at the top table along with another two celebrities and the host of the party. Iwa tries to conceal her unease, but she doesn't know what to do. The host seems almost amused and is waiting for some explanation. "I'm sorry, he's an old friend of mine." Hamid goes over to Igor, who looks suddenly uncertain. The girl with him says loudly, "Hello, Mr. Hussein. I'm your new actress." People at the other tables turn around to see what's happening. The host smiles. It's always good to have something unusual happen at a party. It will give his guests plenty to talk about. Hamid is now standing in front of the man. The host realizes that all is not well and says to Iwa, I think you'd better retrieve Hamid, or if you'd like, we can get another chair for your friend. His companion will, I'm afraid, have to sit elsewhere. The guests have turned their attention back to their food, their conversations about yachts, private planes, and the stock market. Only the host keeps a watchful eye on what's going on. Go and talk to them, he says. Iwa, however, isn't there. Her thoughts are thousands of miles away in a restaurant in Irkutsk, near Lake Baikal. The scene was different then, with Igor leading another man outside, making an enormous effort. She gets to her feet and joins the two men. Go back to the table, says Hamid quietly. We're going outside to talk. That's the most stupid thing he could possibly do. She grabs his arm and, smiling, pretends to be happy to be meeting someone she hasn't seen in a long time. With great aplomb, she says, but supper's only just beginning. She doesn't add my love. She doesn't want to open the doors of hell. She's right. We'd be better off talking here. Did Igor say that? Perhaps she's been imagining things, and it isn't at all as she thought. Has the child finally grown into a responsible adult? Has the devil been forgiven for his arrogance and returned to the kingdom of heaven? She so wants to be wrong, but the two men are still staring at each other. Hamid can see something deeply perverse behind those blue eyes, and for a moment a shudder runs through him. The young woman holding out her hand. Pleased to meet you. My name's Gabriella. He doesn't return her greeting. The other man's eyes are shining. There's a table over in that corner. Why don't we all go sit down there? Says Iwa. A table in the corner. Is his wife going to leave her place of honor at the top of the table and sit at a table in the corner? Iwa has already linked arms with both men and is leading them toward the only free table, near the door through which the waiters come and go. The actress follows behind. Hamid detaches himself for a moment and goes back to his host to apologize. I've just met a childhood friend, and he has to leave tomorrow, and I wouldn't want to miss this chance to talk a little. Please don't wait for us. I can't say how long we'll be. No one will steal your places, says the host, smiling, knowing full well that the two chairs will remain empty. I thought he was your wife's childhood friend, says the former Miss Europe waspishly. Hamid, however, is already walking back to the worst table in the room, reserved for the celebrity's assistants who, despite all precautions, often manage to slip in where they're not supposed to be. Hamid's a good man, thinks the host, as he watches the courtier walk away, head held high. But the night hasn't gone off to a very happy start for him. They all sit down at the corner table. Gabriella understands that this is her one chance, yet another one of those many one chances that have happened today. She says how pleased she was to receive the invitation and that she'll do all she can not to disappoint. I trust you, she says. I even signed the contract without reading it. The other three people don't say a word. They just look at each other. Is something wrong? Can it be the effect of the champagne? Best to keep talking. I'm particularly happy because, contrary to what people usually say, the selection process was very fair. There were no special requests, no favors. I did the test this morning. They didn't even let me finish reading the text they gave me. They just asked me to go to a yacht and talk to the director. That sets an excellent example, Mr. Hussein. I mean, treating people with dignity and honesty when it comes to choosing who you're going to be working with. People think that in the world of cinema, the only thing that really counts is, she was about to say, sleeping with the producer, but the producer is sitting next to his wife, is what a person looks like. The waiter brings the entrees and launches into his usual monologue. Tonight's entrees are artichoke hearts in Dijon mustard sauce, drizzled with a little olive oil, flavored with the finest herbs and served with slivers of Pyrenean goat cheeses. Only the young woman smiles and listens to what he's saying. He realizes that he isn't welcome and leaves. It looks delicious, she says. Then she glances around at the others, none of whom has made a move to pick up a knife or fork. Something is very wrong here. Look, you obviously need to talk. Perhaps I should sit somewhere else. Yes, Hamid says. No, stay here, says the woman. What should we do now? Do you like your companion? The woman asks. I've only just met Gunther. Gunther, Hamid and Ewa look at the impassive Igor sitting beside her. And what does Gunther do? Aren't you friends of his? Yes, and we know what he does, but we don't know how much you know about his life. Gabriella turns to Igor. Why doesn't he help her? A waiter arrives to ask what wine they should like to drink, white or red, saved by a stranger. Red for everyone, says Hamid. You still haven't told us what Gunther does. She hasn't been saved. He works with heavy machinery, I think. We hardly know each other, really. The only thing we have in common is that we were both waiting for friends who never turned up. A good answer, thinks Gabriella. Perhaps that woman is having a secret affair with her new partner, or else an affair that her husband has just found out about. That would explain the tension in the air. His name is Igor, announces the woman. He owns one of the biggest mobile phone companies in Russia. That's far more important than selling heavy machinery. If this is true, why did he lie? She decides to say nothing. I was hoping to meet you here, Igor, the woman says, addressing Gunther now. I came looking for you, but I've changed my mind now, comes the blunt reply. Gabriella suddenly gives her paper-stuffed handbag a squeeze and adopts a surprised expression. Oh, my phone's ringing. I think my friend must have arrived, so I'd better go find him. I'm so sorry, but he's come a long way just to be with me, and since he doesn't know anyone else here, I feel kind of responsible for him. She gets up. Etiquette dictates that one shouldn't shake hands with someone when he or she is eating. Although the others haven't touched their food, the wine glasses, however, are already empty, and the man who, up until 2 minutes ago, was called Gunther, has just ordered a whole bottle. I hope you got my messages, says Igor. I received 3. Perhaps the telephone network here is worse than the one you developed. I'm not talking about telephones. Then I don't know what you're talking about. And she says, but what she wants to say is, I know you're not. Just as Igor must know that. During the first year she was with Hamid, she waited for a phone call or a message for some mutual friend to tell her how much Igor was missing her. She didn't want him near her, but she knew that hurting him would be the worst thing she could do. She needed to placate her own personal fury and pretend that one day they would be good friends. One afternoon, when she'd had a bit to drink and finally summoned up the nerve to call him, she found that he'd changed his mobile number. When she phoned him at the office, she was told he was in a meeting. When she rang on subsequent occasions, always with the help of a little Dutch courage, she was told that Igor was traveling or would phone her back at once, which of course he never did. And she began to see ghosts everywhere, to feel that she was being watched, that soon she would suffer the same fate as the beggar and the others whose promotions to a better life Igor had hinted at. Meanwhile, Hamid never asked her about her past, alleging that everyone has the right to keep his or her life locked up in secret in the subterranean tunnels of memory. He did all he could to make her happy and to help her feel safe and protected. He even told her that his life had only begun to make any sense since meeting her. One day, absolute evil rang the doorbell in their apartment building in London. Hamid was home and sent him away. Nothing else happened in the months that followed. Gradually, she succeeded in deceiving herself. Yes, she had made the right choice. The moment we chose a path, all other paths disappear. Or the moment we choose a path, all other paths disappear. It was childish of her to think that she could be married to one man and friends with her ex-husband. That was only possible between well-balanced people, and Igor was not well-balanced. It was best to believe that an invisible hand had saved her from absolute evil. She was enough of a woman to make a new man at her side feel dependent on her, and to help him as much as she could. As lover, advisor, wife, and sister, she channeled all her energy into doing just that. During this period, she had only one real friend who disappeared as suddenly as she appeared. She was Russian too, but unlike her, she had been abandoned by her husband and didn't really know what she was doing in England. They spoke almost every day. I left it all behind, Ewa told her once, and I don't regret it one bit. I would have done the same, even if Hamid, against my wishes, hadn't bought a beautiful estate in Spain and put it in my name. I would have made the same decision if Igor, my ex-husband, had offered me half his fortune because I need to live without fear. And if one of the most desirable men in the world wants to be by my side, then I'm obviously a better person than I thought. It was all lies. She wasn't trying to convince her only confidant, but herself. It was all a front. Inside the strong woman sitting at the table with two powerful and important men was a little girl afraid of being left alone and poor, never having experienced what it was to be a mother. She had simply got used to all the luxury and the glamour. No, she was always preparing herself to lose everything from one day to the next when her present companion finally found out that she wasn't what he thought she and was incapable of meeting others' expectations. Did she know how to manipulate men? Yes. They all thought she was strong and confident, a mistress of her own destiny, and that she was capable of leaving any man, however important or eligible. And the worst thing was that men believed it. Men like Igor, like Hamid. And because she knew how to pretend, because she never said exactly what she was thinking, because she was the best actress in the world and knew better than anyone how to hide her vulnerable side. "What do you want?" he asked in Russian. "More wine." He sounded as if he didn't much care what the answer she gave. He had already said what he wanted. "Before you left, I said something to you, but I think you must have forgotten." He had said so many things. "I promise that I'll change and start working less. You're the only woman I love. If you leave, it will destroy me." Words familiar to everyone, and which are utterly devoid of meaning. I said, "If you leave me, I'll destroy a world." She couldn't remember him saying this, but it was perfectly possible. Igor had always been a very bad loser. "But what does that mean?" she asked in Russian. "At least be polite enough to speak English," says Hamid. Igor turns to face him. "I will speak English, not out of politeness, but because I want you to understand." And turning back to Iwa, he said, "I said I would destroy a whole world to get you back. I started doing that, but was saved by an angel. I realized that you didn't deserve it. You're a selfish, implacable woman, interested only in acquiring more fame and more money. You refused all the good things I offered you because a house deep in the Russian countryside didn't fit in with your dream world. A world, by the way, to which you don't belong and never will. I sacrificed myself and others for your sake, and that's not right. I need to go to the very end so that I can return to the world of the living with a sense of duty done and mission completed. Now as we speak, I'm in the world of the dead." This man's eyes are filled with a look of absolute evil, thinks Hamid, as he listens to this absurd conversation full of long silences. "Fine. He'll let things go to the very end, as Igor suggests, as long as that doesn't mean him losing the woman he loves. Even better for him, Ewell's ex-husband is not only turned up accompanied by some vulgar woman, he has insulted Ewell to her face. He'll allow him to go on a little longer, and will know when to bring the conversation to a halt, when it's too late for Igor to apologize or to beg forgiveness. Ewell must be seeing the same thing, a blind hatred for everything and everyone, simply because one person didn't do as he wished. He wonders what he would have done were he that man who is now apparently fighting for the woman he loves. He would, he thinks, be capable of killing her. The waiter reappears and notices the plates are all untouched. Is there something wrong with the food? He asks. No one answers. The waiter understands. The husband must have caught his wife in flagrant with her lover in cons, and this is the final confrontation. He's seen it all before, and it usually ends in a fight or a row. Another bottle of wine, says one of the men. You don't deserve anything, says the other man, his eyes fixed on the woman. You used me, just as you're using that idiot beside you. You were the biggest mistake of my life. The waiter decides to check with the host before bringing them the other bottle of wine. But one of the men has just got to his feet, saying to the woman, That's enough, we're leaving. Yes, let's all leave. Let's go outside, says the other man. I want to see how far you would go to defend a person who doesn't know the meaning of the words honor and dignity. Two males fighting over a female, the woman asks them not to go outside, but to return to the table. The man with her, however, seems ready to respond to the insult. The waiter considers warning the security guard that a fight might ensue, but the head waiter is already complaining that the service is too slow. So what is he doing hanging around here? He has other tables to serve. He's right, of course. What happens outside isn't his problem. And if he admits to listening in on a conversation, he'll get told off. He was being paid to wait tables, not to save the world. The three of them cross the garden where the cocktails had been served, and which is now undergoing a rapid transformation. When the guests come down from supper, they'll find a dance floor lit with special lights, the seating area furnished with armchairs, and several small bars, all serving free drinks. Igor walks ahead in silence. Ewa follows, and Hamid brings up the rear. There is a small metal gate at the top of the steps down to the beach. Igor opens it and asks them to go first. Ewa refuses, but he seems not to mind and goes down the many flights of steps that lead to the sea below. He knows that Hamid will not prove to be a coward. Until he met him at the party, he had considered him to be nothing but an unscrupulous courtier, a seducer of married women, and a manipulator of other people's vanity. Now, however, he secretly admires him. He is a real man, capable of fighting to the end for someone he believes to be important. Even though Igor knows that Ewa hasn't one iota of the talent of the young actress he met tonight, she can't disguise her feelings at all. He can sense her fear. He knows that she's sweating, wondering whom to call, how to ask for help. When they reach the sand, Igor walks right to the end of the beach and sits down close to some rocks. He asks the others to do the same. He knows that despite her terror, Ewa is also thinking, I'm going to spoil my dress. I'm going to get my shoes dirty. But she sits down beside him. The other man asks her to move a little, and so that he can sit there, but she won't budge. He doesn't insist. There they are, the three of them, as if they were old acquaintances in search of a moment's peace in which to contemplate the rising of the full moon before they go back up the steps to listen to the infernal racket of the discotheque. Hamid promises himself that he will give Igor 10 minutes, time enough for him to say everything that's on his mind, to vent the rage, and then go back to where he came from. If he turns violent, he'll be the loser, because Hamid is physically stronger and, as a Bedouin, trained to respond swiftly and precisely to any attack. He doesn't want to cause a scene at the party, but the Russian should be under no illusion he's prepared for anything. When they go back up, he'll apologize to their host and explain that the situation has been resolved. He knows he can speak openly to him. He'll tell him that his wife's ex-husband had turned up without warning and that he'd felt it best to remove him before he caused any trouble. If the man doesn't leave as soon as they return to the party, he'll summon one of his own bodyguards to expel him. Igor may well be rich and own one of the largest mobile phone companies in Russia, but he's being a nuisance. You betrayed me, not just during the 2 years you've spent with this man, but during all the years we spent together. Ewell said nothing. What would you be capable of doing in order to keep her? He asked Hamid. Hamid wonders whether he should answer or not. Ewell isn't a piece of merchandise to be haggled over. Can you rephrase the question? Okay, would you give your life for the woman beside you? There is pure evil in the man's eyes. Even if Igor had managed to steal a knife from the restaurant, Hamid hadn't noticed him doing so, but you must consider all possibilities. He will have no problem disarming him. No, he wouldn't give his life for anyone except God and the chief of his tribe. But he must say something. I would fight for her, and if it came to it, I think I would be capable of killing for her. Ewa can stand the pressure no longer. She would like to say everything she knows about the man on her right. She is sure that he murdered the actress and destroyed her new companion's long-cherished dream of becoming a film producer. Let's go back up. What she really wants to say is, please, let's get out of here now. You're talking to a psychopath. Igor appears not to hear what she said. You'd be capable of killing for her. So that means you'd be capable of dying for her too. If I fought and lost, yes, I think I would. But let's not start a fight here on the beach. I want to go back up to the party, says Iwa again. Hamid, however, feels his male pride is in question. He can't leave there like a coward. The ancient dance performed by men, humans and animals, in order to impress the female is just beginning. When you left, I somehow couldn't be myself, says Igor, as if he were alone on the beach. My business was prospering, and I could keep control of myself during the day, but at night I would plunge into a black depression. I had lost part of myself I could never recover. I thought I might be able to do that by coming here to cons. But when I arrived, I realized that the part of me that had died couldn't and shouldn't be resuscitated. I'll never take you back, not even if you came to me on bended knee, begging for forgiveness and threatening suicide. Eowyn breathed easier. At least there wouldn't be a fight. You didn't understand my messages. I said I would be capable of destroying whole worlds, and you didn't get it. Or if you did, you couldn't believe it. What does it mean to destroy a world? He puts his hand in his trouser pocket and takes out a small gun. He doesn't point it at anyone, though. His eyes remain fixed on the sea and the moon. The blood starts to flow faster in Hamid's veins. Igor either wants to frighten and humiliate them, or this really is a fight to the death. But will he kill them there at the party, knowing that he'll be arrested as soon as he goes back up the steps? He can't be that mad. If he were, he could never have achieved all that he has achieved in his life. Enough distractions. He is a warrior trained to defend himself and to attack. He must stay absolutely still, because although the other man isn't looking directly at him, he knows that his senses will be alert to any gesture. The only part of his body he can safely move is his eyes, and he can see that there is no one else on the beach. Up above, the band is just beginning to tune their instruments, preparing for the most enjoyable segment of the party. Hamid isn't thinking. His instincts are now focused on acting without interference of his brain. Ewa is sitting between him and Igor, and she seems hypnotized by the sight of the gun. If he tries anything, Igor will turn and shoot, and she might get hit. Yes, perhaps his first hypothesis was correct. Igor wants to frighten him, to force Hamid to show himself to be a coward and lose his honor. If he really wanted to shoot him, he wouldn't be holding the gun in that casual manner. It would be best to talk and try to get him to relax a little while he thinks of some way out. What does it mean to destroy a world? Destroying a life, a whole universe gone. Everything that person saw and experienced, all the good and the bad that came his way, all his dreams, hopes, fears, defeats, and victories ceasing to exist. As children, we learned by heart a passage which I only later found out came from a Protestant priest. He said something like, when the sea bears away into its depths a single grain of sand, the whole of Europe grows smaller. We don't notice, of course. After all, it's just a grain of sand, but at that very moment, the continent is diminished. Igor pauses. He's starting to feel irritated with the noise from up above. The sound of the waves was so calming, allowing him to treat this moment with the respect it deserves. The angel with the dark eyebrows is watching and happy with what she sees. It was supposed to teach us that we were responsible for creating the perfect society, namely communism. He goes on, we were all brothers and sisters, they said, but in fact we were spies trained to betray each other. He becomes calm and thoughtful again. I can't quite hear you. This will give him reason to move. Of course you can. You know that I have a gun in my hand, and you want to come closer to see if you could grab it off me. You're trying to engage me in conversation in order to distract me while you consider what I do. Or what to do, sorry. Please don't move. The moment hasn't yet come. Igor, let's drop the whole thing, Ivo says in Russian. I love you. Let's go away together. Speak in English. Your companion here needs to understand what you're saying. Yes, he would understand, and later he would thank her for it. I love you, she says, in English this time. I never received your messages. If I had, I would have come running back. I tried several times to phone you and never got through. I left many messages with your secretary, but you never called me. That's true. Ever since I started getting your messages today, I've been longing to see you again. I didn't know where you were, but I knew that you would come and find me. I know you don't want to forgive me, but at least allow me to live by your side. I can be your servant, your cleaner. I'll look after you and your lover. Should you ever decide to take one, all I want is to be with you. She'll explain everything to Hamid later. She has to say something, anything, just to get them out of there, and back up the steps to the real world, where there will be policemen who can stop absolute evil from revealing its hatred. I'd like to believe that. Or rather, I'd like to believe that I love you too and want you back, but I don't. Besides, I think you're lying and that you've always lied. Hamid isn't listening to what either of them is saying. His mind is far away with his warrior ancestors, asking for inspiration to make the right move. You could have told me that our marriage wasn't working out as we both hoped. We'd built so much together. Couldn't we have found a solution? There's always a way of allowing happiness in, but for that to happen, both partners have to acknowledge that there are problems. I would have listened to what you had to say. Our marriage would have regained all its initial excitement and joy, but you didn't want to do it that way. You chose the easy way out. I was always afraid of you, and now, seeing you with that gun in your hand, I'm even more afraid. Hamid is brought abruptly back to Earth by Ivo's last comment. His soul is no longer somewhere in space, asking advice from the warriors of the desert, trying to find how he should act. She can't have said that. She's handing over power to the enemy, and now he'll know that he's capable of terrifying her. I would like to have invited you to supper one day and tell you I felt so alone. Despite the banquets, jewels, journeys, and meetings with kings and presidents, Ivo says, do you know something else? You always brought me really expensive presents, but never the simplest gift of all, flowers. This is turning into a marital argument. I'll leave you two to talk. Igor says nothing. His eyes are still fixed on the sea, but he's still pointing the gun at him, indicating that he should stay where he is. The man is mad, and his apparent calm is more dangerous than if he were screaming threats at him. Anyway, he says, as if unperturbed by either words or by Hamid's attempt to move. You chose the easiest way out. You left me. You didn't give me a chance. You didn't understand that everything I was doing was for you, and because of you. And yet, despite all the injustices and humiliations, I would have done anything to have you back until today. Until I sent you those messages, and you pretended not to have received them. In other words, even the sacrifice of those other people didn't move you. You just couldn't get enough of power and luxury. The star who was poisoned and the director whose life still hangs by a thread is Hamid imagining the unimaginable. Then he understands something even more serious with that confession. The man beside him has just signed their death warrant. He must either commit suicide there and then, or put an end to the lives of the two people who now know far too much. Perhaps Hamid thinks he himself is going mad simply by misunderstanding the situation, but he knows that time is running out. He looks at the gun in the man's hand. It's a small caliber. If it doesn't hit certain critical points in the body, it won't do much harm. He can't be very experienced. If he were, he would have chosen something more powerful. He obviously doesn't know what he's doing. He must have bought the first thing he was offered, something that fired bullets and could kill. The band has started playing up above. Don't they realize the noise of the music will mask the sound of the shot? Then again, would they know the difference between a gunshot and one of the many other artificial noises that are currently infesting? Yes, that's a word. Infesting, polluting, plaguing the atmosphere. Igor has gone quiet again, and that is far more dangerous than if he were to continue talking, emptying his heart of some bitterness and bile. Hamid again weighs up the... I feel like I have something in my eye, sorry. Weighs up the possibilities. If he's going to act, he needs to do so in the next few seconds. He could throw himself across Iwa and grab the gun while it's lying casually in Igor's lap. Even though Igor's finger is on the trigger, he could reach out to him with both arms, forcing Igor to draw back in fright, and then Iwa would be out of the line of fire. Igor would point the gun in his direction, but by then he would be close enough to grab his wrist. It would only take a second. Now, maybe the silence is a positive sign. Perhaps Igor's lost concentration, or it might be the beginning of the end. Meaning that he said all he has to say. Now, in the first fraction of a second, the muscle in his left thigh tenses, propelling him furiously forward in the direction of absolute evil. The area of his body shrinks, and as he hurls himself over Iwa's laps, arms outstretched. And the first second continues, and he sees the gun being pointed directly at his head. The man moves more quickly than he had expected. His body is still flying toward the gun. They should have talked before. Iwa had never said much about her ex-husband, as if he belonged to a past she preferred not to think about, ever. Even though everything is happening in slow motion, the man draws back as nimbly as a cat. The gun in his hand is perfectly steady. The first second is just reaching its end. He sees a finger move, but there is no sound, only a feeling of something crushing the bone in the middle of his forehead. His universe is extinguished with it. And with it, the memories of the young man who dreamt of being someone. His arrival in Paris, his father's shop, the sheik, his battle to gain a place, and the son of the fashion shows. The trips abroad, the meeting the woman he loves, the days of wine and roses, and The laughter and the tears, the last moon on the rise, the eyes of absolute evil, the look of terror in his wife's eyes all disappear. Don't cry out. Don't say a word. Keep calm. Of course she isn't going to cry out, nor does she need to be told to be calm. She is in a state of shock, like the animal she is, despite her fine jewelry and her expensive dress. Her blood is no longer circulating at its normal speed. Her face grows pale and her voice vanishes. Her blood pressure plummets. He knows exactly what she's feeling. He once experienced the same when he saw the rifle of an Afghan warrior pointing it at his chest. Total immobility. And a complete inability to react. He was only saved because a colleague fired first. He was still grateful to the man who had saved his life. Everyone thought he was just a chauffeur, when in fact he owned many shares in the company, and he and Igor often talked. Indeed, they had spoken that very afternoon when Igor phoned to ask if Iwa had shown any signs of having received his messages. Iwa, poor Iwa, sitting there with a man dying in her lap. Human beings are unpredictable. Sometimes they react as that fool reacted, knowing that he had no chance of beating him. Weapons are unpredictable too. They expected the bullet to come out the other side of the man's head, blowing away the top part of the brain, but given the angle of the shot, it must have pierced the brain, bounced off of the bone, and entered the thorax, because he's trembling uncontrollably, but with no sign of blood. It must be the trembling, not the shot, that has shocked Iwa. With one foot, Igor pushes the body to the ground and puts a bullet through the back of the man's neck. The tremor cease. The man deserves a dignified death. He was, after all, valiant till the end. They are alone now, on the beach. He kneels down in front of her, places a barrel of the gun against her breast. Iwa doesn't move. They had imagined a very different ending to this story, with her understanding his messages and giving the two of them a new chance of happiness. He had thought of all the things he would say when they were finally alone again like this, looking out at the calm Mediterranean Sea, smiling and chatting. He doesn't want to live with those words stuck in his throat, even if those words are useless now. I always thought that one day we'd walk hand in hand through a park again, or along the seashore, finally saying those long postponed words of love. We would eat out once a week, travel together to places we'd never been to, simply for the pleasure of discovering new things in each other's company. While you've been away, I've been copying poems out in a book, so that I could whisper them to you as you fell asleep. I've written letters telling you how I felt, letters I would leave where you could find them, and then you'd know that I'd never forgot you, not for a single day, not for a single moment. We would discuss plans for the house you wanted on the shores of Lake Baikal, just for us. I know you had a lot of ideas for that. I planned to have a private airport built there, and of course, I'd leave the decoration of the house to your good taste. To you, the woman who justified my life and gave it meaning. Iwa says nothing, but stares out at the sea before her. I came here because of you, only to realize that it was all pointless. He squeezes the trigger. There was almost no sound because the barrel of the gun was pressed against her body. The bullet entered precisely at the right place, and her heart immediately stopped beating. Despite all the pain she had caused him, he didn't want her to suffer. If there was a life after death, both of them, the woman who betrayed him and the man who encouraged her, were now walking along, holding hands in the moonlight, fringing the shoreline. They would meet the angel with the dark eyebrows, who would explain everything that had happened and put an end to any feelings of rancor or hatred. At some point, everyone has to leave this planet known as Earth, and besides, Love justifies acts that mere human beings cannot understand, unless they happen to be experiencing what he has experienced. Ewa's eyes remain open, but her body grows limp and falls to the sand. He leaves both bodies there and goes over to the rocks, carefully wipes any fingerprints from the gun and throws it into the sea, as far as possible from the place from where they had been sitting contemplating the moon. He goes back up the steps, finds a litter bin on the way, and drops the silencer in it. He hadn't really needed it. The music had reached a crescendo at just the right time. Book. 10:55 p.m. Gabriella goes over to the only person she knows. The guests are now leaving the supper room. The band is playing music from the 60s. The party is beginning and the people are smiling and talking to each other despite the deafening noise. I've been looking for you. Where are your friends? Where's yours? He's gone. He said there was some problem with the actor and the director, that's all, and then he left. The only other thing he said was that tonight's party on the yacht has been canceled. Igor realizes what has happened. He hadn't had the slightest intention of killing someone he greatly admired, and whose films he always tried to see whenever he had the time. Nevertheless, it's fate that makes these choices. The man is just an instrument. I'm leaving. If you like, I can drop you off at your hotel. But the party's just beginning. Enjoy it then. I'm flying off early tomorrow morning. Gabriella has to make a decision quickly. She can either stay here with that handbag stuffed with paper in a place where she knows no one, hoping that some charitable soul will give her a lift as far as Cressette, where she will take off her shoes to climb the interminable hill up to the room she's sharing with 4 other friends, or she can accept the offer of this kind man, who probably has some very useful contacts, and who's a friend of Hamid Hussein's wife. She had witnessed the start of what looked like an argument, but such things happen every day, and they would soon make it up. She has a role in a film. She's exhausted from all the emotions of the day. She's afraid that she'll end up drinking too much and spoiling everything. Men will come up to her asking if she's on her own and what she's doing afterward, and if she'd like to visit a jeweler with them the following day. She'll have to spend the rest of the night politely avoiding people, trying not to hurt anyone's feelings, because you could never be quite sure who you were talking to. It was, after all, one of the most exclusive parties at the festival. Let's go. That's how a star behaves. She leaves when no one's expecting her to. They go out to the hotel reception. Gunther, she can't remember his other name, asks the receptionist to call a taxi for them. And she tells them they're in luck. If they'd waited very much longer, they would have had to wait in an enormous queue. On the way back, she asks him why he lied about what he does. He says he didn't lie. He used to own a mobile phone company, but had decided to sell it because he felt the future lay in heavy machinery. What about his name? Igor is an affectionate nickname, the Russian diminutive of Gunther. Gabriella is expecting him at any moment to come out with the words, "Shall we have a nightcap at my hotel?" But he doesn't. He leaves her at the door of the house where she's staying, shakes her hand, and leaves. How elegant. Yes, this has been her first lucky day, the first of many. Tomorrow, when she gets her phone back, she'll make a collect call to a city near Chicago to tell everyone the big news and ask them to buy the gossip magazines, because she'd been photographed going up the steps with the star. She'll also tell them that she's had to adopt a new name. However, if they ask her what's going to happen next, she'll change the subject. She has a superstitious belief that one shouldn't discuss projects until they actually happen. They'll hear all about it as the news leaks out. Unknown actress chosen for a major role, Lisa Winter, as the guest of honor at a party in New York previously unknown Chicago girl is the new sensation of Gibson's latest movie. Agent negotiates $1 million contract with one of the major Hollywood producers. The sky's the limit. 11:11 p.m. You're back early. I'd have been back here sooner if it weren't for the traffic. Jasmine kicks her shoes off, drops her bag, and throws herself down on the bed. Exhausted and fully clothed, she says, "The most important words in any language are the short ones. Yes, for example, or love, or God. They're all easy to say, and they fill up the empty spaces of our universe. But there's one small word I have great difficulty in saying, but I'm going to say it now." She looks at her companion. "No." She pats the bed, inviting her companion to join her. Her companion does so and strokes her hair. The word no has a reputation for being mean, selfish, unspiritual. When we say yes, we think we're being generous, understanding, polite, but I'm going to say no to you now. I won't do what you're asking me or making me do, even though you think it's in my best interest. You'll say that I'm only 19 and don't yet fully understand life, but going to a party like the one tonight was quite enough for me to know what I want to do and what I definitely don't want. I never planned to be a model, and I didn't even think I was capable of falling in love. I know that love can only survive when it's free, but whoever said I was anyone's slave, I'm a slave only to my... Butter? Yeah, go for it. I'm only a slave to my heart, and in that case my burden is a very light one. I choose you before you choose me. Or before you chose me. Wait, I chose you before you chose me. Okay. I embarked on what seemed an impossible adventure, and never complained about the consequences, whether it was society's preconceived ideas or resistance from my own family. I overcame all those things so that I could be with you here tonight in Cannes, savoring the victory of an excellent fashion show and knowing that there will be other opportunities in life by your side. Her companion lies down next to her, her head in Jasmine's lap. The person who made me realize this was a man, a foreigner, whom I met tonight while I was at the party. Lost in the crowd, not knowing what to say, I asked him what he was doing there, and he said that he'd lost his love and come here to look for her, but wasn't sure anymore whether she really was what he wanted. He asked me to look around at the other guests. We were, he said, surrounded by people who were full of certainties, glories, and conquests, but they weren't enjoying themselves. They think they're at the peak of their careers, and the inevitable descent frightens them. They're forgotten, and that they've forgotten that there's still a whole world to conquer because they've got used to life as it is. Exactly. They have lots of things, but few aspirations. They're full of problems solved, projects approved, businesses that prosper without them having to do anything. Now all that's left is the fear of change, which is why they go from party to party, from meeting to meeting, so as not to have time to think and to meet the same people over and over and be able to believe that everything's the same. Certainties have replaced passions. Take off your dress, says her companion, preferring to say nothing more. Jasmine gets up, takes her dress off, then slips between the sheets. You take your clothes off too and put your arms around me. I really need to feel your arms around me because today I thought you were going to let me go. She does as Jasmine asks and turns out the light. Jasmine falls asleep at once in her arms. She, however, lies awake for some time, staring at the ceiling, thinking that sometimes a 19-year-old girl, in all her innocence, can be wiser than a 41-year-old woman. However fearful and insecure she may feel right now, she'll be forced to grow. She'll have a powerful enemy in HH who will doubtless create as many obstacles as he can to prevent her taking part in the Fashion Week in October. First, he'll insist on buying her name, and when that proves impossible, he'll try to discredit her with the Federation saying she's failed to keep her word. The next few months will be very difficult. What H doesn't know, indeed, what no one knows, is that she possesses an absolute power that will help her overcome all difficulties. The love of the young woman now lying in her arms. For her, she would do anything. Anything, that is, except kill. With her, she is capable of anything, even winning. 1:55 a.m. His company jet has the engines running. Igor sits in his favorite seat, second row on the left, and waits for takeoff. As soon as the seatbelt sign is turned off, he goes to the bar, serves himself a generous measure of vodka, then drinks it down in one. For a moment he wonders if he really had succeeded in sending those messages to Ewa, while he was busy destroying worlds. Should he have been more explicit, adding a further note or a name or something like that? That would have been terribly risky. People might think he was a killer. He was a serial killer. And he wasn't. He had an objective, which fortunately had changed in time. The thought of Ewa doesn't weigh on him as much as it used to. He doesn't love her as he once did, and he doesn't hate her as he came to hate her. With time, she will disappear completely from his life, which is a shame because he's unlikely to find another woman like her. For all her defects, he goes back to the bar, pours himself another vodka, and again drinks it down in one. Will they realize that a single person was responsible for extinguishing those worlds? Does it matter? His only regret is the moment he decided to give himself up to the police in the afternoon. Fate, however, was on his side and managed to complete his mission. Yes, he had won, but the winner doesn't stand alone. His nightmares are at an end. An angel with dark eyebrows is watching over him and will teach him which path to follow from now on. St. John's Day, March 19, 2008. And that's the end of the book. Alright, y'all are getting my opinion, okay? Since we went through this whole fucking book, I don't like how it ends. Okay? I don't like how it ends. That's my opinion, alright? Oh, all that. But I do like what Jasmine did. I like that she chose love over vanity and glory. She ended up getting more glory in the end, you know? But holy fuck. I'm ready for the next book. Alright, namaste. I love you guys. I'll see you later.